Awesome. Good morning, everyone. I hope everybody is well. It is raining here in Atlanta, Georgia, so it's a little wet outside. So I'm trying to channel the opposite energy and do my best to share and talk to you all more about my experiences today. So just to start off with what I hope folks get out of my presentation today. So I'm going to be really talking a lot about the research that I found that I felt really articulates my experiences and perception of Black women in America. And also moving forward from that, I really wanted to kind of paraphrase what are some of the experiences that I have had and challenges that I have experienced just working in residence life as a Black woman supervisor. And then next, I will end by just really talking about what are some things that I feel are important to my self-preservation and what it means for me to work through and within the system that I am situated in today. So just to introduce myself a little bit more, my name is Chelsea, and these are the identities that I lead with, right? Being a Black cis woman, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. And to talk more about my experiences professionally, so I did work full-time in residence life after being an RA in undergrad, and then I was able to move on and do residence life work as well as in graduate school. And then now I'm in my second year professionally post-grad working in residence life. So I'm not a res lifer, but I clearly like it. So I'm still here. And I've worked mostly at public institutions, but working at a private institution now at predominantly white institutions. So I just kind of wanted to give that background just so folks knew where I was situated and where I was kind of sharing my experiences from. So I wanted to start off today again by just situating Black womanhood and talking about, what does it mean to be a Black woman, right? So I also wanted to share that, these are my specific experiences. I'm not necessarily speaking to the experiences of everyone, right? So we know, Blackness, womanness, all these identities are diasporic in nature. So these really are me speaking to my specific experiences and the research that I found, as well speaking to the experiences of illuminating that research as well. All right, so first I wanted to start off with intersectionality. I think it's always a place that I feel makes the most sense to lead. I think in graduate school, thinking about intersectionality and learning about intersectionality, I was exposed to the ways in which intersectionality has been, replicated or reiterated in different capacities. But one thing I think is really important to remember when we are talking about intersectionality is, so when Crenshaw first reiterated this theory or this idea, she was more so talking about the Black women's employment experiences, right? So a Black woman who couldn't discern, am I facing sexism or am I facing racism? And so Crenshaw initially used intersectionality to really talk about how she was sitting at the intersection of both of these dimensions, right? I mean, she was specifically talking about Black women's experiences in the workplace. So I thought that was a great way to kind of situate and initiate kind of where I'm coming from with my experiences. So next, I wanted to talk about the Black womanhood archetypes. So if folks are not familiar, so these are the 6 stereotypes that are often painted as the image of Black women in different capacities. So these are stereotypes that have emerged through slavery and still continue to impact the ways in which Black women are viewed current day in every sector of society. And I'm also even going to talk about kind of like some ways in which we see these archetypes show up in modern day television and modern day film as well. So first I wanted to start off with these 3. So the mammy, the matriarch, and the welfare mother. So first I'll start off with the mammy. So whenever folks think about the mammy, the first thing that comes to mind is, the historical Aunt Jemima. So like an African woman, jovial, being submissive, loyal, nurturing, just really serving typically a white family. And so I think of that just as like a starting point and how that really did emerge in slavery and throughout a lot of Black history. When I think about this, I think about movies like The Help and how we depict Black women as serving others, right? The matriarch, I think with the matriarch, I think the biggest thing that I illuminate here or think about is how some Black women are maybe characterized as aggressive or overbearing or domineering. And oftentimes the stereotype is attached to Black women who are single mothers and often have to work, right? In order to provide if they have a family. But sometimes that can also be seen as like this overbearing matriarch character. And then last on this slide, talking about the welfare mother. So with the welfare mother, illustrating Black women as being dependent on government assistance or like a fallacy, portraying Black women as lazy or, wanting to, I would say, I don't even know the word I'm looking for, just trick the system, right? And we also see this a lot too in movies. I think about the movie Precious a lot whenever I think about the welfare mother. So I'll talk about that in some of my further slides. So these last three, these final three that I'm going to talk about are the ones, especially the last two, are the ones that I have seen or felt have impacted me the most in my experiences. So the first one, talking about the Jezebel, so that really presents Black women as promiscuous, hypersexual, and immoral. So the Jezebel, I think that the consequences of the Jezebel is oftentimes we see an adultification of Black girls, this hypersexualization of Black women, and being seen as like sexual characters oftentimes, and that really does happen with the Jezebel. And then the last two, the sapphire or the angry Black woman, this is the one that I feel like that I have seen most prominent in my experiences. So this assumption that Black women are hostile and Black women are aggressive and Black women are bitter and irate. And so whenever I think about the angry Black woman, I think about, there's a book by Bell Hooks called Killing Rage. And in Killing Rage, Bell Hooks talks a lot about how, the anger for Black women is rooted in historical and cultural and economic and political implications, right? And how, rage and anger really does have a place in activism, and it's what we do with it and how we navigate it. And that's what I've seen really be characterized as most often in my experiences. And I'll talk a little bit about that in my presentation as well. The last one is the Superwoman. So the Superwoman I find to be the most damaging, I would say. And so seeing Black women as, strong and resilient, and we always hear the strong Black women type stereotype. And that isn't to say that Black women aren't strong, but I think that folks don't realize that this has real implications on the lives of Black women. Oftentimes, at times, maybe internalizing it and feeling like, you have to be strong through everything and you can't necessarily be emotional and you have to take on everything. And at times, even myself, I've internalized those stereotypes. Excuse me. Ooh, the talking. Ooh, it's the talking for me. I'm sorry, y'all. Whoa, all right, I'm back. Okay. Often leads to Black women internalizing these stereotypes and feeling like, we really can't experience the full spectrum of who we are as Black women because we have to be strong. So these are some pop culture references that really immediately came to mind when I was thinking about the archetypes. Just maybe what people might be familiar with. So first I thought about Medea and how Medea is depicted as the mammy character or the sapphire and just like this fiery character, but really depicting that stereotype. And it's really, a lot of people I feel like know Tyler Perry movies. Maybe they don't, I don't know. We got Tyler Perry Studios here in Atlanta, so maybe I just made that assumption. But yeah, and then so with the welfare queen and the sapphire, so that's Monique and that's from the movie Precious. I thought about that movie a lot because in that movie, she talks about needing government assistance and maybe like cultivating or making it seem like she needs more than possibly she actually needed. And so how Monique depicted that character there. And then last, Olivia Pope. If folks are familiar with Scandal, the first thing I immediately thought about is, how Olivia Pope comes up and she says, it's handled, and makes it seem like she can handle everything and she's a superwoman and can take on honestly anything. And so I think one thing I think is important to realize specifically is, we have these archetypes, and while we don't realize how it is operating in the ways in which we are viewing Black women, it's so prevalent that we're depicting it in characters on TV and in film, and we're recreating these messages about what Black women are supposed to be like. And if there's any other references folks can think of, I'm going to go ahead and peek in the chat and see. Yeah, Annalise Keating, she was on here at first, but I was like, you only have so much time, Chelsea. So yeah, if anyone else thinks about anything else, I would love to hear about it. We're going to keep moving forward. So how do these archetypes influence the perception of Black women in higher education? So through my research, I wanted to find a more prominent or modern study, but I think that was kind of like a glaring area in which I saw that potentially needed to have more research to happen. But this study was most prominent to me. So it was a research that was completed at Arizona State University, and it was conducted among over 200 white non-Hispanic identifying students. And so the students were asked to select traits from a scale in which they best believe described 8 groups. And 2 of those groups were American women in general and Black women. And the study found that the traits selected for American women in general were overwhelmingly positive, while the traits for Black women were more negative. So the traits selected to describe women, Black women specifically, viewed Black women as loud, aggressive, argumentative, stubborn. And so wanting to actually illustrate what this looks like. So this is the actual table from the study. So on the left-hand side, we see the study and kind of how students talked about American women, and we see the study and how they talked about Black women. So when I was looking at the study, I was like, I see a connection here. I don't know about y'all, but I see a connection here. And the connection being, again, these archetypes and these stereotypes and thoughts that we have about Black women, and maybe that we're not articulating, are having implications on the way even college students and these higher education institutions that we work at are seeing us and are seeing the work that we're doing. Next, I also wanted to talk specifically about Black supervisors, right? So, kind of like I shared before, I've been a Black supervisor. This is my 4th year supervising students, staff in some capacity. And so I've seen, since I finished undergrad, I've seen just various interactions I've had with student staff members. And I always think through, okay, like, how does who I am and my identities and the identities I hold, how does that inform the way folks see me, right? Especially as a supervisor. So through my research, again, I found a study that was also specifically super interesting to me. And it really talked about, the study investigated the relationship of several training and non-training variables with employers' evaluation of Black supervisors' job performance. So in some of the places that I've worked, we've given students the opportunity to potentially, provide feedback about their supervisor, or maybe some things that they would like to see or grow or work on, right? And so one thing that was found through this research study was that an employer's perception of a Black supervisor's social behavior tended to be the most important influence on evaluating a Black supervisor. So when we think about the social and systemic implications of both racism and sexism, we simply cannot divorce them from the ways in which, we're showing up in spaces, or we're viewing Black women in spaces, right? Especially the supervision space. So I thought that was really apparent and jarring to me. And I also think it really spoke to just kind of the ways in which I've seen my experiences be characterized or talked about as a supervisor. So here I'm going to shift into talking about my experiences. So I just kind of wanted to recall my positionality and just kind of connect some dots. So just keeping in mind kind of like the archetypes and the research in which I've presented today, and just kind of, talking through my experiences a little bit more. Okay, with the Zoom, you got to move the Zoom sometimes. All right. So this quote is a quote from a book. It's called Shifting: The Double Lives of Black Women in America. And basically these 2 authors, they started a project, and it was called the African American Voices Project. which highlighted the experiences of Black women in America with racism and sexism. And they actually were able to have 333 participants ages 18 to 88. And so it's a pretty great book. And I felt like it really, really spoke to a lot of the things that I've experienced, but not necessarily been able to speak to. And so leading with this quote, too many Black women in America are coping with crippling fear and anxiety. If they say what they think or act the way that comes naturally, they will be rejected, excluded, or even hated. And so we do what we call shifting. My voice is doing that thing again, y'all. And so we do what we call shifting. A large number of Black women in America feel pressure to present a face to the world that is acceptable to others, even though it may be at odds with their true selves. When I thought about this quote and I was reflecting on my experiences, it's this constant feeling of imposter syndrome. Like, am I supposed to be here? Can I say the right thing? Am I going to say the wrong thing? Am I risking my livelihood? How am I interacting with these students? This hyper surveillance of who we are and our experiences, right? So I want to talk about, like, how do I shift, right? So the authors talk about, like I said on the previous slide, this notion of shifting in certain spaces. So how do I shift as a Black woman supervisor in residence life? Or how have I shifted over the past, 4 years of supervising student staff? So hypersurveillance of how I'm being perceived in certain spaces. So I was in choir back in the day. I was an alto too. And so naturally I have a deep tone. And I think that at times it could be perceived as maybe my tone is aggressive or my tone is just connecting back to those archetypes, right? Or my mannerisms, how I'm making sure I'm not, coming off to a certain way that could be aggressive to folks, right? Sometimes comedic relief, sometimes if I feel as if maybe I'm being too serious, I'll crack a joke. I think I'm funny. I would like to think I'm funny. And so I laugh at myself a lot. And so maybe I'll do like a joke to try to like ease the tension, right? I think perfectionism is something that comes up a lot in my life and in the workspace that I experience, feeling like I can't mess up, right? So it's like, if I mess up, there's no room to fail, right? Like everything has to be perfect at all times. This desire to be liked. I think that that's something that I have struggled with a lot this year, and feeling like, I have to be likable in this space, and wanting to make sure that I'm coming off as likable and I'm saying things a certain way, right? And then last is student accountability, not necessarily in the fact that I don't feel like I can hold my students accountable, but I feel like I have to be hyper aware of how I do it. That way it's not coming off as, I'm coming off a certain way, or I'm coming off too aggressive when I'm holding them accountable. So it feels as if, internalizing these stereotypes, it feels as if being super conscious of how I'm being received in certain spaces, and it feels limiting. And, for me, as someone who really is committed to developing and growing students, it's hard when you feel like you have to continuously second guess and question yourself when you really do want the best for them, but you know that it may not be received as the way in which you're intending. So I took some live feedback that I've gotten. I'm putting it all out there today. And so this is feedback that I've gotten throughout the breadth of my experiences, not just at one place in which I've worked at. And when I was like reviewing this, I was seeing so much of how these archetypes have really continued to show up in how I'm being viewed. So, comments on my tone, like I said, I'm an alto too, so I have a deep voice. So my tone perhaps being interpreted the wrong way, or my tone being interpreted as more aggressive than the intention, or maybe I'm coming off as aggressive in a staff meeting with students, right? And those are kind of the things that I've seen. I think with the strong piece, I question a lot. I often ask myself, okay, this student is complimenting me for being a strong person. Is this a compliment? Or maybe let me consider, how have I showcased that I am strong in this space, right? I think that while it could be well-intended, I think it continues to push this notion of the strong Black woman and feeling like maybe I can't experience the full spectrum of my emotions or my experiences in a certain space. So with this quote down here by Jones and Shorter Gooden, so I really felt like it really spoke to why I feel like I've internalized or I have to shift in certain spaces. So it says, many Black women go to great lengths to make sure that their personal views do not upset relationships or impede their progress on the job. And they are careful that what they do say is not taken the wrong way. They feel pressure not only to change their style of speech, their vocabulary, grammar, and mannerisms, but also to alter the content of their speech, what they talk about, and what they dare bring up. So now this is our time for some audience engagement. I would love to hear from potentially 2 or 3 folks. Does any of this stand out to you? Do you shift? If so, does your race and gender impact when, where, and how you shift? So I would love the help of my moderators at this time to help regulate this. If folks want to raise their hand, I would love to hear from our participants today.
Okay, Brianna Welsh looks.
Yeah, I was just gonna say some of the things that you were talking about, Chelsea, definitely resonated with me. One thing that I've noticed as a Black entry-level professional is a lot of times my white supervisors, they would give me feedback in a different way. And so like, it wasn't until I got this job in North Carolina in 2019 that I actually was able to be supervised by somebody who looked like me full time, but also didn't use feedback to tell me that like nothing I did in my job was right, because that's the feedback that I always got, that I just wasn't good enough like my white colleagues. And I was always singled out about everything. Everything I said in a meeting was not taken seriously, or I was being aggressive, I was upset. And at the time I was just like, yeah, I'm pissed off. Like, you all have pissed me off. And at this point, you're gonna hear that I'm pissed off. And so I think like sometimes our white counterparts, they don't understand that eventually you're going to get us to a point to where we are mad, we are upset, and I might come off aggressive, but you've brought this on yourself because I've tried to be palatable, I've tried to be likable, I've tried to do things your way to fit in. And at this point, like, I'm diminishing who I am as a person and what I bring to the table and my authenticity. And I will never do that, because I have students that look like me, that are looking up to me, to create a space for them. And creating a space for them does not mean silencing my own voice for the sake of making my white colleagues feel better about themselves, because I'm done doing that. And so I think we have to shift our mindset as Black women professionals, especially those in a position of power. So our ADs, associate directors, executive directors, whatever that may be, to play the game a little bit, but also not forget that you have people that are supervised under you that are looking to you for that support, because they're sitting at the tables that we don't have access to. And if I can't trust that you're going to be my voice and not water my voice down and how I show up, once I get there, then I will never be accepted, or anybody that looks like me will never be accepted, because we can never just be our true authentic self once that table is created. So, and I'm all about flipping tables. I'm all about controversy, not because I like to make people like mad. It's more so I like to make you uncomfortable, and I want to understand, like, why are you so uncomfortable right now? And let's talk through it so we can get to a space to where you don't shut down or give me these white tears to try and make me feel bad about what I'm saying, because I don't feel bad about what I'm saying. I mean everything that's coming out of my mouth, but I also need you to be in a space to receive it. And if you're not, then that's personal work that you need to do before you come and have a conversation with me.
Thank you, Brianna. Thank you. I see some people on my screen. I see Shin, I see Alexis, and I see Chelsea. So maybe we'll go with you three.
All right. Hi. So my name is Shin, full name Shinneman Bartley. So I came on late, but what I have seen, like, oh my goodness, it hit me. Like, especially about comedic relief. That is literally, I like to think I'm funny too. I think I'm hilarious. Does everybody else think so? Who knows? But what I have noticed is that I have my hair covered today, but I wear different color hair. So purple, blonde is my new one right now. I had red before. And so I see that sometimes I do have to shift because of, you know, the hair that I have. Sometimes I feel that people may judge me based on like, oh, she's probably this way or that way. I don't want to use ghetto because I don't really know how that's received. But sometimes I feel like people look at me differently in certain, professional spaces because of the color of my hair. And so even with certain things of like when I speak, I try to be, I smile a lot and all that stuff. And that's a part of my, normal personality. But sometimes I feel like I have to tone myself down in certain areas because I'm a Black woman. So they may think I'm being angry or I'm mad. And I'm like, I'm not mad. I'm literally joking around right now. I don't know how you're receiving this, but I'm trying to tell you I'm joking around. So I do have to shift in certain spaces because people may not understand that my excitement is not aggression. It's literally just because I'm excited. So yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I really resonate with the hair piece. I had a student staff member once. He was a white male. I had gotten a new wig and he walked into the room and touched the wig.
Oh.
And so I can really resonate on the hair piece. It's this feeling of like constantly like being watched or like feeling like you can be touched. So I really appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you.
Alexis?
Hey y'all, good morning. So I guess two things I was really thinking about. One was the tone. As you can tell, I talk like a white person. It's how I was raised. I'm from Florida. But also I recently had to like hold some students accountable for being late to duty check-in, which is not an unusual thing. And when one of my friends, who's also a Black woman, was talking to me and she was like, yeah, my students said that you yelled at them. And I was like, yelled at them? Me yelled at that? I didn't realize, I guess, until that incident happened, that I am very intentional about not raising my voice to students. And I'm just like, I yelled at them. When did I yell at them? What are you talking about? All this stuff or whatever. I'm like, oh, just because just because I was stern with you, I'm suddenly yelling at you, which has never been a thing they've said about me or anyone else and stuff or whatever. And I was just like, interesting. Because they're like, yeah, we were afraid to call in because we didn't want to get yelled at again. Who yelled at you? Please tell me, because someone else was there and they were like, you did not yell at all. I don't understand. Me neither. So that was a piece. That was super great. And then there's another, right? So like I'm leaving my institution. I got another job, which is great. And everyone's like really salty about it. Like a lot of the like upper folks or whatever and stuff who are white are really salty about it because like there's 3 Black women all at my same level and I'm the one that's leaving. And I think that I have been seen as like the dependable one, the one that's like, not gonna like make waves and stuff or whatever, the one that they definitely thought was still gonna be here after like 2-3 years or whatever and stuff. And I'm dipping, like I have to go because I can't stay at my institution anymore. And I like in that, right, like no one has said like congratulations, no one, like other folks or whatever and stuff are being pulled into meetings with other people to like try and figure out if they're okay. And I was like, oh, it's because I'm leaving, like no one's asking me, why are you leaving? None of that stuff. It's just like, dang, that was our one, our dependable one, the one that we really wanted. And now it's like, ooh, she's leaving. Ugh, well, how could she? And I was like, cool, great. This is the reason, like, this is why I'm leaving. Sounds great. So those are some things I was thinking about.
Yeah, Alexis, thank you so much for sharing, especially about the holding your students accountable on the duty check-in. I recently had to do that with moving. They decided they wanted to be late. And there was a lot of feeling like I had to over prepare to not come off a certain way when I held them accountable. So I completely understand and I hear everything that you're saying. So thank you so much for sharing. We'll do Chelsea next. I see Chelsea.
Yeah, hi everyone. Hi Chelsea, I'm Chelsea too. And I'm in Atlanta too. But I think what has just come up for me during this presentation is just things that I experience. I think the hardest thing for me, or the most challenging thing for me, is that I don't want to come off as weak or come off as like I can't handle the things that are given to me. But I have felt often that things were kind of pushed onto me, oh, because she can handle it, or she's not going to say no. And it's been really hard to, I guess, speak up for myself or advocate for myself and say no without it appearing as I'm not, able to handle these extra things, or, I'm lazy, or I don't want to do this, because the way I just normally carry myself in my job, I take a lot of pride in my job. And so, typically I do want to do these extra things, but I think that sometimes it's gotten to the point where things are just kind of pushed onto me and assumed that I'm going to do it. And often it comes from my white counterparts. And so it's kind of like I'm navigating this space of white mediocrity and having to like uphold this strong Black woman, you know, persona when, you know, I don't want to say no and then, or ask for help. And then it's like, oh, well, we won't ask for her to do things in the future, or maybe she can't do all the things. So it's something that I've been challenged by in the few years that I've been a professional, but it is something that I'm working on. And I'm also working on kind of like instilling that self-advocacy in my students that I work with, and like asking them, you know, about their feelings about certain things and giving them that space to like say, no, this is why we can't do it. But it's hard for me to help them with it because it's hard for me to navigate it myself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. All of these things you're saying, I really resonate with. I'm not just saying that like, oh, I resonate, like, nah, I really resonate. So thank you so much for sharing. And then last I see Erin Jones.
Yes, so I supervise professional staff. I advise student staff, but I'm the director of housing at my institution. And so I think this is something that you experience even as you go up in your professional roles. I think one of the most difficult things that I'm very careful about how I say. So I work at an institution that is formal in the sense of if a person has a terminal degree, they call them doctor. And so when people call me miss and I correct them, that sometimes is taken wrong. Or I can write, my signature has Erin Bond Jones, comma, PhD, and people will say miss. And, you know, I'm very much like, okay, you've been working with me for 6 months or however long you've been working with me. You've not met the president, yet you do not forget that his name is Dr. So-and-so. So, you know, I think just remembering and correcting folks sometimes is taken the wrong way. I also think when someone, maybe it was Chelsea or Alexis, whomever was talking about being the dependable one at work. So I feel like I'm the dependable one. And so my reward for good work is more work. Recently, my supervisor has talked with me about, hey, he wants me to take on an extra task. My supervisor is a Black man, so we have very candid conversations. And I said, hey, tell me what it is because I got bamboozled last time. And he kind of looked at me like, what? And I said, well, you know, I didn't really ask enough questions about what you wanted me to do. So our volunteer day is like next Friday. So when I was asked to be a team leader, I'm thinking, great, you're going to give me a team of people. You're going to tell me what we're going to do to volunteer, and I will do that. I did not know that my responsibility would be to recruit my own volunteers, find a volunteer site. And I was like, oh my goodness, you know, I don't have time to do this because budgets were due. I had 5 budgets in my department. So I think sometimes, I don't know if I got this task or I was asked this because I'm a woman, because I am a firm believer that women are asked to do things that men are not asked to do. Whether it's take minutes in meetings. So I try to be very cognizant about the things I ask my staff to do. And it's the expectation that I take this on, or whatever my new task will be, with no more money. And I just can't do that anymore. And so part of my shifting has also been because I'm a new mom. I had a baby 7 months ago. So I can't just be giving all my time away. You know, I need some time to kind of be at home. Absolutely. And I think the last thing is like using actual language. So we were doing some facilities work in one of our buildings, and the suggestion was to do the work while the students were in the building. So literally in email, I said, hey, we really need to have a meeting so we can really employ some sense making in these decisions. And my supervisor told me that the VP thought that those stream of words was rude. And I'm like, if white people would have used the word sense making, and if a man would have used it, you would have been all over it. But because the little 106-pound Black woman used sense making, it was like, oh, that's rude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I do think I try to teeter totter sometimes. Brianna, y'all, these comments in the chat are hilarious, y'all. So, but you know, I think that it's really hard for me to grapple with that, because you say, you know, Black women sometimes are sensitive and all these things, when it's like, we're not sensitive, because I've never called my, you know, supervisor and said, hey, this person was rude, this person was mean, this person, you know, it's always someone else who does not look like me that is calling somebody else rude. So I'm like, maybe you're the sensitive one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I hear you on that. I think it's I think more so speaking to like not always being expected to like be stoic or not have emotions or reactions to certain things. It's more so what I was speaking to. But yeah, I think sometimes the sensitivity isn't necessarily on us, but maybe being projected on us, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would love to do all these hand raises, but we don't have much time. But we will have time for questions at the end, or if anybody wants to continue to make comments. So I'm just going to go through the last bit of my presentation just for the next few minutes, and hopefully we'll have some more time for some more comments. Okay, so coping, right? So when I was thinking about, you know, a lot of times when I think about these presentations or when I think about scholarly work, it's usually ends with, what are our implications for practice? You know, what are our takeaways? You know, how can we instill change and a lot of these things? And I think I thought a lot about, I was a women's studies major in college. So everything I do is like from a Black feminist perspective. So I thought a lot about Audre Lorde, and I thought a lot about this quote specifically. And it says, for the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. They may allow us to temporarily beat him at his own game, but they will never enable us to bring about genuine change. So for my experiences specifically, you know, working at PWIs, like I understand that these were institutions that were not cultivated to make space for people like me, right? So there it goes again. For people like me, right? So while I think that, you know, there are implications and actions that potentially we could take within these systems that, you know, maybe could help, I think we need to think bigger, right? And I think we need to think beyond this, right? So oftentimes I see this quote a lot. I see this quote, folks reiterating this quote or saying this quote, you know, caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare, by Audre Lorde. So I think the big piece from this quote that is usually missing when we're talking about this quote by Audre Lorde is when Audre Lorde wrote this, she was battling breast cancer. And so in that battle, you know, she was literally talking about, when she said this quote, caring for herself was necessary for her life, right? And I think we missed that piece. So this is from a piece, it's called the Cancer Journals, in case anybody's familiar with that. And so I found some work that talked more about really investigated what was Audre Lorde really talking about when she was talking about self-care and self-preservation, specifically for Black women. So, and the quote that I found, it says, our understanding of self-care has been compromised because we've missed the depth from which Audre Lorde spoke based on the fight that she engaged with for her life. You know, while I think, you know, we always say, you know, take a day off, you know, here are some extra days. And I think all of those things are self-soothing activities. And I think all of those things can be helpful, but, you know, they don't necessarily help us in terms of navigating these things that are continuously coming up in our lives as Black women, right? And so, yeah, like it's great to take a spa day, you know, take a trip, come back. But thinking about, you know, what was Audre Lorde really talking about when she was talking about what it means to preserve ourselves? So she talks about the self-care she referenced focused on an autonomy and an audacity. I'm going to say that again, an autonomy and an audacity with which Black women would govern and direct our own lives. If we continue to focus on taking up practices to restore our joy and balance instead of focusing on preserving ourselves, we miss a more abiding and enduring experience of living. You know, I think that I remember this past summer, I was having a really hard time with everything that was going on, right? I think everybody was having a hard time with it, but I was just having another hard time because I've had so many hard times when these things come up, whether we're talking about police brutality or we're talking about George Floyd or whatever the case may be. And I started to consider, if I'm like Breonna Taylor, if I can't go to sleep without worrying about, dying, or if I can't go to the grocery store, if I can't drive and I can't do these things, I really began to question, like, what is the point of my life, right? Like, how can I really truly exist in this space that doesn't allow me to fully experience anything? And so what I started to think was that, it really is revolutionary for Black women, for me, to live my life to the full spectrum. It is a revolutionary act, especially in a system that doesn't want me necessarily perhaps to be healthy or to survive or to be successful. My existence alone is a revolutionary act. My self-care, my self-preservation is a revolutionary act. And, I'd like to think I've worked hard. I'd like to think that we've all worked hard to be in the places that we are. And I think it's all about really affirming that, and doing things and leading my life in a way that makes sense to me, right? And so how I choose to do that and preserve myself specifically is, these are the things, and then I would love to hear from others as well. First and foremost, practicing discernment. So for me, discernment, I heard a quote recently, focusing on my work, right? What is my work? What is my life's work? And what is the work of others? Discerning what people are saying to me, what other people's opinions are of me. Like, is that truly my work, or is that the work of another person, right? Next is affirmation. I think, we really underscore the quality and the impact of affirmation. So for example, this morning before this presentation, I woke up and I said to myself, I'm destined for success, right? And that's what I said. I said that about 10 times. And it helps me kind of push through this moment right now that we're having today. Next is therapy. I know therapy can be tough for some people. I know working in campus life specifically, we're usually telling our students to seek counseling and psychological services, and we're telling them to, use that as a resource, but also using that as a resource for ourselves too, in whatever capacity that may be, right? I think having that outlet, and for me, having a Black woman therapist to really talk through my experiences with has been so salient to my experience. I think next is an identity. I think it's really important for me. I have a complete identity outside of work. Like Chelsea at work and Chelsea outside of work, 2 different people, maybe 4 or 5 different people. So one thing that I think is really important to me is being a part-time yoga teacher. I also teach yoga as well. And so that is something that I'm super passionate about doing. And that is something that I love doing. So I don't only derive, who I am as a person from the workspace. I derive it from my family, my friends and my community as well. And then that leads me next to talking about community. I'm super thankful to work in a place where I do feel supported and do have a community of people. And, my colleagues that are on the call, shout out to y'all. I'm really thankful. I know that isn't the truth for everybody. And if that isn't necessarily the truth for you, what does community look like outside of your workspace? And then last but not least is escape. I think pre-COVID, I was definitely like a catching flights, not feelings girl, doing what I need to do, maneuvering spaces, but that has been hard during COVID times, but still doing what I can to escape when possible, whether that's going home to visit my parents or my family as well. And so these are the ways in which I continuously preserve myself. And so just beyond, just taking the day off or anything, like these are things that I feel are core to who I am and core to my values and core to my beliefs, and help me get through and survive as a Black woman, right? So I would love to hear, what are some things folks do for self-preservation? I think Brianna talked about maybe moving on to, or no, it wasn't Brianna, I think it might've been Alexis. There were lots of names. Someone talked about moving on to maybe a new experience as a form of self-preservation, and not choosing to be in a certain space anymore, right? So I would love to hear about, how do you practice self-preservation in the spaces in which you exist? So we have about 6 minutes left in today's presentation. So I'm going to, if anyone wants to keep their hand raised, make any comments, I would love to hear before we close, but I'll leave this up in case anybody does want to follow up via email. I see Chance?
It's Shantae.
Wow, I missed the mark. Shantae, hey girl.
Hello, Shantae, she, her pronouns. For me, I think in terms of preservation, something that I try to do is be intentional with my time, and also making sure that I set those boundaries in the workplace. So this semester I implemented, because I work in housing, and we all know it can be, a challenge and such. And, so making sure that after hours and stuff like that, that I have those types of boundaries. So telling my staff between 8 and 8, that's when you can reach out to me. And after that, if I'm later on them, like replying, just know that I'm probably, doing things for myself, but I'll do my best to respond to you as necessary. But 8 and 8 will be the times that I'm available to you. Unless I'm on call, then I'll make sure I'm even more open for those opportunities for you. But I think making sure that I set those types of boundaries between me and my staff have been helpful, especially this semester. I also have like a self-care Sunday, so I don't do anything work related. Sometimes I don't even leave the house, and I just do that for myself, have that day that I just do anything that makes me happy. So I think kind of making sure that I'm implementing those pieces into my life to have that kind of rejuvenation.
Awesome. Thank you. There's nothing I love more than Black women taking care of themselves, living in luxury, doing what we do. So I love that. Thank you. Anyone else? I can't see it. If my moderators see it, there's only so much I can see.
Yeah, I am not seeing anything right now. Yeah.
Anyone else? Oh, okay.
Bob has a question.
Go ahead.
Did we just jump out? Oh, okay. Well, I'm talking, so I'll just keep going. Hi, my name is Ellery, she, her pronouns. And I think for me, I'm the same way. I try to create boundaries, but also being the only Black woman in my department, I've been the only Black woman now for almost 4 years. I find self-care through my Black female RAs and student staff. It's literally our bonding time. We talk about our hair, we introduce new products to each other. We talk about our days and things that have happened that impact us, because normally on a day-to-day basis, we are the only in a lot of spaces that we are in. And so it's amazing how, yes, for them as students and me as a professional, there are things that are still impacting us. Yeah. And it just becomes our safe space. So it has truly been a form of like self-care for me to sit and just bond and talk with them, talk about the food or the lack of food in the area. Just different things for us have just been a really true bonding experience. And I truly appreciate them, because without them, it was definitely a struggle. It was a struggle to not have someone that I can have different conversations with, because I think I'm like, several of you, like Chelsea, you mentioned your wig, and like, I mean, I cut my hair recently and they copied and pasted my face into a short hair, a picture on Pinterest, and they were like sending it to me, and we like bonded over like, yeah, like I think this hairstyle will be okay for you, but don't go blonde. Like it's literally our self-care. So that has been something that has helped me while I've been here at a predominantly white institution. So.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I can definitely resonate. I was able to help start, we have like a first year Black Women Student Initiative here at Emory. We're actually meeting today. And so it's just a bunch of freshman Black girls and talking to them about like what that's like. And that has also been super healing for me. So I really appreciate that. Like, it's community, it's the community, it's the connection. So I love that. I love that. Anyone else?
I know one thing that I wanted to add to the conversation, reiterate, is the therapy piece. I think we as Black women are taught that we're the ones that hold things together, and in holding things together, we have to hold everything about ourselves in. And if 2020 taught me anything, is that everything has a breaking point. And I did not truly take in what therapy would mean for me until I reached that breaking point where I was like, I don't want anything from anybody. I lost all desire for anything that I was passionate about. And so I really, really have become a true advocate for Black women seeking out therapy. Do it for yourself. You have the time. Everything else you're letting steal your time, you take it back and give it to yourself and talk to somebody. Because I can tell you, in just the few months that I have been in therapy, the walls that I've broken down for myself, the pieces of myself that I've rediscovered would have remained consistently lost to me if I hadn't had just some outlet. And I think sometimes you have other community of friends and family, but there are things you don't share in those spaces because of the fear of judgment and because we've been taught that we hold together. So sometimes, depending on your relationship with your girlfriends, you may not feel you can actually share some of these things. But this is what a therapist is for. I will preach this therapist thing this whole time. I shared the link to the Black Therapist website. Please, I found a really great therapist through there. Please use it. If that's one thing you do different this year for yourself, particularly for us who work in housing and student affairs and all of it with all of the pressure, do this thing, because you will be better for it. You will grow, you will recognize and reclaim who you are in ways that you probably didn't realize you had lost yourself. So just wanted to share that before we all jump out.
Thank you so much for sharing that so passionately. I retweet, so love that. Great, awesome. I think that we are out of time. I am checking in with my moderators.
Hey, Sor, I just wanted to let you know, hey, you did your thing. You know what I'm saying? As a, and just personally, like, as a Black man, I just wanted to sit back. I'm just taking in all this stuff because I think a lot of times, especially in our community, we talk too much and we don't listen. You know what I'm saying? Especially on the men's side, you know what I mean? So just know that, hey, we stand with y'all. For those of us that sit here, Marcus is over there commenting too. This has been definitely healthy to see, you know what I'm saying? And so thank you for allowing us, you know what I'm saying, into the space just to sit and observe and learn something, you know what I'm saying? So you did great. Hats off to you, Queen.
Thank you so much. Yes, I will be celebrating later. Emory friends, be hitting you up. So yes, yeah, thank you so much. Wondering if anyone else has anything to say, or
I'm just gonna pop in real quick. Chelsea, what's up? Great job. Proud of you. That's my friend, y'all. Go Emory.
Oh, gosh. All right. Thank you. You can't bring them nowhere. All right. Thank y'all so much for everything. I went ahead and put my email on there. So feel free to reach out if anyone has any further comments or conversations they would like to have. I'm also on Facebook as well. If you would like to add me on Facebook, I have no problem with that. But yeah, thank you all so much. I hope everybody has a wonderful day and much love and light to you. Bye.